alcoholic, and I want to welcome all here. I see a lot of people that I've been doing this stuff. I don't even know how long Sabal Palm's been in existence, but I think for as long as you've been around, I've been doing step meetings over here. I see a lot of friends and people I know, and some I haven't seen in a long time, or I see a lot of you guys on Zoom meetings and stuff like that. David, speaking of Dave, I was on a Zoom meeting the other day. It was like a day ago or 2 days ago, and you were like in Budapest. It's like such a huge thing we have here, it was like in Budapest the other day, and we're at a meeting together, and we had a great time at that meeting, and now he's here, so that kind of stuff happens these days, we meet people from all over the world. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization we're in. And Mario, do I still sponsor you?
Yeah.
What's that?
Part-time.
How much time you have now?
31 years.
31 years of undetected drinking. I'm just kidding you. I love you, Mario. It's good to see you. We have to get together more often, It's good to see you. A lot of good friends and everybody here. It's good to see you guys. So tonight we're allegedly on the third step. Things change as you grow older. Stuff happens. Life happens. Cancer happens. People die. All my heroes in AA, all my heroes are dead. All the guys I grew up with, the guys on the circuit that, were speaking, that I listened to all the time on tapes and recordings, my sponsors, my mentors, all my mentors that I loved, they've all passed away. So many things, I've experienced so many things. They say, in the 12 and 12, I believe, it says that we get a new perspective on life, on everything. And the way we get a new perspective is by repeated humiliations and the final crushing of our self-sufficiency. When I first came in, I had a sponsor named Bob Sullivan, a wonderful guy. He died of cancer when I had about 7 or 8 years. And he once said to me, I still remember some of the stuff these guys said to me. They're like emblazoned in my mind. He said, Russ, when a man with experience meets a man with money, the man with experience will walk away with the money, and the man with the money will have walked away with the experience. I got that. I figured that out. Do you know what that means, Mario? I know what that means. It means that you may think you're smart. You may think you know what's right or wrong, or good or bad, and you may think a lot of things. Alcoholics have a lot of opinions about things. But the bottom line is, what's true is something that lasts. And I'll tell you what. When the rubber meets the road and the cancer comes and the people die and the IRS comes in and takes all the money out of your bank account and your wife divorces you or whatever the heck happens in life, as life tends to happen, without warning you it's going to happen, you find yourself in situations where no matter how smart you are, smarts ain't going to do it. A fourth step may not even do it. An eighth step might not even do it. You find yourself in a situation where you're really without answers. Even if you're going to meetings, even if you have a sponsor, you find yourself in the oven. I like to call it the oven. If you look at the book of Exodus, about 2 million Jews walked out of Egypt and they were on the way to the promised land, which was only, I think, about 3-week journey by foot or something, 3 or 4 weeks. 40 years in the desert. And what I've learned, so you learn, here's what happens. You may have a certain experience after 3 months. My sponsor say, Russ, you can walk, you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? And you really don't know whether you can walk the walk until you walk it. There's this whole thing we're involved in, all these steps and everything, where you have to find not only a power not to drink, because everybody stops drinking. Now, you may say, well, that's not true. Yeah, there's probably a guy who died who didn't stop drinking, but everybody gets their 3 years, their 5 years, their 10 years, their 20 years, and things like that. But there's another power. It's a different power. It's probably the same power. It's a power by which we could live. It's a power by which we could live. You'd be surprised how many people can stay sober for many, many years just on the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was one of those people, I have to admit. It's hard to generalize and say 100%, but I think what they say in chapter the agnostics, which is, by the way, written to agnostics. By the way, the book takes a position, says this sort of thinking has to be abandoned. In other words, according to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, being an agnostic and atheist, the condition of being in the program and doing the program is it has to be abandoned. It doesn't work. That's the position of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. But you'll have people stand up in AA meetings and say, I'm an agnostic or I'm an atheist, and nobody will say anything. You talk too much about God, they'll be all over you, which is, I think, to a certain extent, confusing to alcoholics. I think it's confusing to alcoholics because alcoholics want to be liked. They want people to like them. It's kind of confusion when on the one hand they read about the God thing, and on the other hand they have people walking up to them and saying, don't talk about the God thing, but people can talk about being an atheist. I think that's like a confusion. That's my opinion. You don't have to like it. You don't have to like it. You can just, here's the great thing. No matter what you think about me or what you think about what I'm going to say, I'm going to tell you what my experience is. And what the book says, each alcoholic in his own language, from his own point of view, talks about how he built his relationship with God. And so I'm not here to force God or that on anybody. I'm not here to impose my beliefs. I'm here to expose my beliefs because that's what my job is. And I think one of the things that happens to you, they say in the big book, is you learn, if the promises are really working and this thing is really true, fear of people and economic insecurity leaves you. And if fear of people leaves you, you don't worry so much about what people in the Sabal Palm group or any group thinks about you. You don't worry about that sort of stuff. You just want to talk about the truth. Many times alcoholics have in their mind this little struggle. Should I say what I really want to say or what's really going on? And what if they don't like me? Should I tell them the truth or should I tell them something so that they'll like me? Should I tell them the truth or should I put on some sort of, shield or something so they won't hate me? And that doesn't only happen in AA. Because if you ever do that in AA, that's the way you live your life. That's how you live your life. Worrying about what people think about you. Spending money you don't have to buy stuff you don't need to impress people you don't like. That's what you think all the time. You cover it up because alcoholics are delusional. They can't separate the true from the false, and their alcoholic thinking in life seems normal. So they tell themselves things to make themselves feel better. We lie to ourselves. As a matter of fact, if you're an alcoholic, one of the symptom of the disease is the alcohol. That goes right away. None of you guys are drinking. Nobody's drinking here. Some of you guys are sober for many years. But the drinking is the symptom of the disease. That goes away. But the real disease centers in the mind. And one of the things we do is we have conversations with ourselves. Sometimes we have conversations with many people in our mind, and they're all us, and they're all bad shit about ourselves and other people. One of the conversations alcoholics like to have with themselves is they tell themselves they don't care what other people think about them. They tell themselves things, well, that's not me. I don't care what other people think about me. Because when you live a life worrying about what you look like and what people think about you, the only way you can survive that is either by drinking or telling yourself and convincing yourself you really don't care what other people think about you. And of course, the only people that say things like that to themselves are people that really do care what other people think about them. Because people that really don't care don't have to tell themselves they don't care what other people think about them. You know why? Because they have courage. And you know what the book says? The book says all men of faith have courage. They say, we never apologize for God, and neither will I. Not to an AA group, not to anybody outside. That's what the book says. If you have a problem with that, you need to write New York, and they say there's some guy here who's been sober he's in his 44th year, and he's telling people that we don't apologize for God. And he's talking about God. And it's getting people nervous. Tell him that. Say he's quoting from the book. He says all men of faith have courage. They trust their God. They never apologize for God. Instead, they let him demonstrate through how? Through our testimony. Through who we are and what we do and how we act. What it's like. And then it says at once we begin to outgrow fear. Because for an alcoholic, fear is the corrosive thread that runs through your life. That's not my opinion. That's what the Big Book says, and I believe in the Big Book. If you're an alcoholic, you're scared shitless of everything. You're scared shitless of people. You're just scared. If you tell me you're not scared, you're lying. See, that's the deal. You either read you either believe in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, or you believe in what your mind is telling you. And of course, if you understand the steps, one of the things the steps says is that we're insane. That's what it says. It says we come to believe that a power could restore us to sanity. And if you're sane, you don't need to be restored to sanity. Only insane people need to be restored to sanity. Now, it may take you 10, 20, 30 years to realize how crazy you are. Because when you live your whole life without any character, pouring yourself out to the world, but thinking you're great, because you have some sort of success. Maybe it's success in business, maybe it's money, maybe it's romance. When it seems that you're doing okay and you're measuring yourself by other people, and if it doesn't get okay, or if there's a problem, you can drink your problems away, smoke your problems away, eat your problem, whatever it is. Sometimes you think you're doing okay for many, many years. And alcoholics have this, I know I did, have this incredible ability to hurt hundreds of people and hurt themselves and somehow tell themselves they're okay, that there's no problem here, that I'm actually doing great. Listen, all I needed to tell myself I was doing great is a girlfriend. If I had a good-looking gal in my arm, I knew I was wonderful. You know what I mean? You know when I used to get depressed? No girl. No girl, depression. A lot of guys, it's no job. No girl, no job, that's suicide. You know what I mean? I don't know anything about women, what gets them or whatever. But I mean, we put these things in our lives to sort of tell us that we're successful, we're doing okay. But now there comes a time where we go down the tubes and we do the first step. And when I say we do the first step, I'm not even sure we know what we're doing when we do. All I know is the book says, why this insistence on hitting bottom? Because nobody's going to do this stuff or even listen to you. Alcoholics, you know what I say? I say, somebody tells me something. I meet somebody in AA who's sober 20 years, and I'm sober like 3 months or 5 years, and he tells me something. I ask him a question, he tells me something, and I know the guy's insane. He's got 20 years, he's insane. I'm sane, and so I look at him, I say, you don't understand, or I'm different, or that's not my program. And then 15 years later, after I've been crushed 18,000 times, I'm talking like that guy is. You understand? Because I can't fathom a different way of living. I live a way that I think is comfortable to me. So on page 42 of the book Alcoholics Anonymous, it says this. Of course, this is the way they thought about it in 1935 to 1939. AA has changed a little bit. 2 of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and they asked me if I thought myself an alcoholic and if I was really licked this time. I had to concede both propositions. And how do you concede? I don't know what happened to you, but what happened to me is on December 25th, 1980, yes, December 25th, 1980, I thought my life was over and it was never going to get better again. I don't have to worry about, I don't have to give all the circumstances. I don't want to waste time on a drunk-a-log. Quite frankly, I'd rather do a faith-a-log. We're in 3. Everybody wants to hear drunk-a-logs. Nobody wants to hear a faith-a-log. But that's the only thing that's going to save you. There's going to come to a point where you're not going to be drinking for 20 years and you go on to kill yourself. You're not going to be drinking for 20 years and you're going to feel loneliness if you do. And a drunk-a-log ain't going to save you. Only a faith-a-log will save you. And we don't do a lot of faith-a-logs in here. So what happened is I thought my life was, I was 31 years old. I had nobody in my life, didn't have the girl, didn't have anything, didn't have my self-esteem. And I thought my life was over. And I got down on my knees and I said, God help me. That's essentially what I did. I said, God, please come into my life. And believe me, I'm not a God guy. I'm a Playboy card guy, Playboy Club guy. I'm a American Express guy. I'm a whole bunch of different deals, but I'm not a God guy. But I was desperate, and that's how I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. And so he says, they grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then they asked me if I thought myself alcoholic, And if I was really licked this time, I had to concede both propositions. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality, such as I had exhibited in Washington, was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. So we got a lot of people that come in here and they announce, I'll bet everybody in this room says, my name is so, introduces themselves. Everybody in this room says, my name's so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic. I'll bet everybody in this room has said that, and I'm an alcoholic. I'll bet 99% of the people that go to AA meetings say, I'm so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic. So let me ask you this. If everybody knows they're an alcoholic, and I don't think they're lying. I think that people come to AA and they say, my name's so, I think they believe they're alcoholics. I don't think they'll have any problem with the first step. Tell me why there's so few people that get more than 20 years and most people drink. Tell me, because from my vantage point, you have to understand, my vantage point is, not that it's a big deal because my sponsor has like 55 years and, it's just time, but, you don't think time is important once you try to get some, you know what I mean? But all time is you get beaten down more and more and more. More and more experience with life, So tell me why so many people don't make it in here. And when I mean make it, I don't mean get 10 or 20 years of not drinking. How many people ultimately drink? How many people get to 25 years and they say, is that all there is? How many people leave meetings because, and you know why people leave meetings? Well, there may be many reasons, but I think one of the people leave meetings, I think if people thought they were actually getting something out of a meeting, if they really liked the meeting, if they really loved the meeting, and they thought it was really giving them something, I think they'd probably stay. Why do you think people leave meetings? They join groups? I think there's a possibility they leave meetings because the meetings aren't doing anything for them. Yeah, there's worldly clamors, and they get involved in other things, but worldly clamors surround me. Worldly clamors are all over the place. You can't hide them. They're all over the place. They're upon you, I go to a meeting at 7 o'clock in the morning. I go to a meeting at 12 o'clock at noon. I go to a meeting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Didn't go this 4 o'clock. I took a nap because I'm old. And now I'm here at this meeting. And that's sort of like my life. And I love hanging around the AAs. I don't have any bucket list. I don't have to go on a cruise or go somewhere or go to anywhere. I don't have to. I don't need shoes. I'm not my shoes. All I want, my greatest joy is hanging around alcoholics and talking to alcoholics, And I know when I've hung around with many people who feel the same way. And most of them have 30, 40, 50 years. And they've been rocking in the fourth dimension, which is defined in the big book as experiencing much of heaven and knowing peace. How many people do you think are experiencing much of heaven, knowing peace? They say we'll be rocketed in the fourth dimension of existence, which means you'll experience much of heaven and you'll know peace. And you experience much of heaven, you know peace and the joy of living. Not that you're happy or something happens, you're real happy about it. Because people who are happy can be unhappy. You're happy because of the conditions of your life, but then you can be unhappy. But people that experience joy can experience joy even when sad things happen. Joy is a different deal. And those are the people I follow. Those are the people I like to hang around these days. So why do you think so many people, like they say in the big book, here and there once in a while, an alcoholic, sober at the moment, could be a guy with 20 years, says feel better, look better, have a better time. When you laugh at such salad, you know he's going to try the old game again because he's not happy with his sobriety. How many people do you think there are in the world in AA that are sober for many years but aren't happy? We may even have one or two people in here that are sober but not happy. We may have one or two people in here that are sober that are not happy, but because of pride are scared to tell people that. There may be people in here that are sober but not happy that are scared to even tell themselves that. Whoa, that'd be something, Well, you don't even know you're unhappy. You're just thinking bad thoughts about yourself and other people and your life. You're wallowing in self-pity, but you don't even know it. Because, you know why you don't know it? Because you're not drinking and you're going to meetings and you're picking up medallions. And that's what you think AA is about, you know? So it goes on to say, they cited cases out of my own experience by the dozen. Okay, then they outlined a spiritual answer. Here's the spiritual answer. You ready?
Ready.
And program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully. Everybody's interested in what's the program. There is actually a program. I mean, there's not, there's Rachel, see, Rachel has a program, but that's not the program. I mean, she's working towards the program. We all work towards the program, but what we want to talk about is our program. I want to talk about my program. My program is doing everything they say to do in the big book, except the shit I don't want to do. Anybody have a program like that? You're doing everything except what they tell you to do that you don't want to do. So you change sponsors or something like that. So it says, they outlined a spiritual answer and a program of action which 100 of them had followed successfully. Though I had been only a nominal churchman, because apparently the program had something to do with church or God or something, their proposals were not intellectually hard to follow. You know, as a matter of fact, simple but not easy. What does that mean? It means simple but not easy. What was the last words that Dr. Bob said to Bill Wilson? Dr. Bob was a man into the God thing. If you went to Dr. Bob and said, what's all this thing about? What's first things first? He said, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all things will be added unto you. So you would say, what's the kingdom of God? What are things? What are you talking about? And you'd be right to say that because you're an alcoholic. You don't even, because I never walked to the Alibi Lounge and said, I'm seeking the kingdom of God. It's not even in your vocabulary. You don't even understand. You think it's crazy. You say, well, that's your program, Dr. Bob. That's not my program. That's your program. See, you can either do the Bill Wilson program, which all do everything in AA. And I'm not putting down Bill Wilson. I love Bill Wilson because I was a Bill Wilson. I worship that guy, you know. But what happened to Bill Wilson is he was great and he wrote a lot of great things with divine intervention and everything like that. But at 21 years, he started taking LSD. Because you know what? You know why you start taking LSD? For the same reason John Kernan started popping Xanax. For the same reason I've lost a lot of guys in here taking drugs or going to psychiatrists. Because you know why? The program, their program, wasn't working for them. The not drinking program wasn't working for them. The group wasn't. You see, what happens is when you come to a group like this, you love the people. You're crazy about the people. You love the organization. Yeah, my wife used to say, why do you have to go to those meetings all the time? I said, I don't have to go. I want to go. They like me. She took it the wrong way, or maybe she took it the right way, you know, but it was true. It's true. Nobody likes you out there. In here, they love you. They love you if you're crazy. They love you if you're wrong or right. You know, they're the greatest people in the world. And so one of the things I realized is that I love going to AA meetings. I love people. I loved you guys like I love my drinking buddies. As a matter of fact, you are my drinking buddies. I'm hanging around. I've always been hanging around alcohol. I hung around them in the bars. I hung around them now. You know what I mean? The last thing I want to do is leave you guys. And here's what I understand. If I drink, I lose you. You understand? If I drink, I can't come. Now, I know you can always come back, but that's not true. Sometimes you never make it back. And I was one of those guys who thought I'd never make it back. So you could be surprised how many years you can be sober just because you want to continue to be a member of this group or any group. Sometimes you just don't want to leave the fellowship. You don't want to do anything to have anybody in the fellowship not like you. You don't want anything to drink. You want to keep your place in the program, but listen, in the fellowship. But listen, that's not the program. That's not the program. You may be lulled into thinking that you're actually doing something by hanging around a group of drunks and being in here. But what happens is life comes in. Worldly clamors come in. Life never stops beating on you. And what happens, you reach a point in time where that thing that you've been evading, the drastic shit that you've been evading and not doing, and you get killed not by all the meetings you're going to. You get killed not because you weren't doing the steps, and you're really not doing the steps if you're not. That's a whole other thing. You get killed not because of the stuff you're doing. You can say, here's all the stuff, here's all the service I'm doing. You know what kills you? The one or two things you're not doing. So it goes on, it says, but the program of action, though entirely sensible, though I'd only been a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. See, I like a comfortable program. I don't like a program that's like I don't even like the word drastic. You know what I mean? You know what I say when somebody tells me to do something that I think is drastic? I said, hey, that's your program. That's not my program. That's your way. That's not my way of thinking. And that's another way that's alcohol code for not willing to go to any length. And it says right here, it meant that I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out the window. That was not easy, but the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I made the decision to do whatever they told me to do. And alcoholics, the chief characteristic is defiance. We don't like people telling us to do, and I ain't going to do it. I had the curious feeling that my alcohol condition was relieved, and in fact it proved to be. And one of the problems I have, well, it's not a problem I have, it's just is that I don't pull my punches. I don't get up in meetings and say, well, I wonder what they'll like to hear. I just tell them what the truth is in my own mind. And you can reject me and you can say that's bullshit and he's bullshit and that's fine with me. But there's only one thing you're not going to be able to reject: life. One day, you're going to run up into cancer, death, IRS, broke, people leaving you, being alone, lack of romance, lack of the whole thing. You're going to run up to life. And you know something? You're going to be going to meetings and you're going to be sponsoring people and it ain't going to work for you. And you're going to go to a meeting to try to hear somebody who's going to solve your problem, and they're going to be talking about not drinking and going to meetings and drunkalogs. And you're going to be not drinking. And you're not going to know what to do from there. You know what? Because you're just going to be filled with self-pity and resentment. Once in a while, you know what it says? In every alcoholic's life, there'll come a time where I have no defense against the first drink. Defense has to come from God. And you're going to be looking for God. You're not going to know who he is because he's in the glove compartment somewhere, You take him out for meetings and you say the Lord's Prayer and you do all that stuff, but you really don't run your life based upon God. He's not in the heart. He's not in your heart. He's not on the throne of your heart. You don't think about him every day. You don't get on your knees every day. What you really do is you give them lip service, and then you spend the rest of the time trying to manage your life, check out your bank account, earn the money, get the car, get the girl, get the guy, and tell yourself if you only had this, you'd be okay, and if you only had that, you'd be okay, and if you're not okay, you assume it's because you're missing something material in your life, and you lie to yourself. This is how you lie to yourself. You say, I'm spiritual. You call yourself spiritual. You get to a certain point in time and you have like 15 years, and I do this, and you say, well, I'm spiritual. But the problem is telling yourself you're spiritual does not necessarily defeat the disease. It doesn't defeat and I'm telling you this because this is what I went through as I was walking through the desert to the promised land. That was only supposed to be 3 weeks away, but it was like 20 years away. And as you go through every year and everything that's going on in your life and all the disappointments and everything that's happening, you know what I mean? What happens is every time you get hit or punched, or forgetting about it all, just going through life, you have to then not only work the steps or look at the steps or look at God, and you got to somehow figure out a way how not to drink and not to go crazy and not to kill yourself and somehow and you're looking for help. And, if you keep on walking in the direction you're walking, you're going to wind up where you're headed. And if you're lucky, if you're fortunate, if you're blessed, if you're serious. What does the book say? If you want what we have and you're willing to go to any length to get it. I don't know why I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by the men I was surrounded by. I don't know. I mean, I could tell you that I just was attracted to them, which would be true, but I don't know why I was attracted to them, and a lot of people were scared of them. But all I know is I ran into these guys, and there are not a lot of them, and gals, that seem to have something more than just not drink. In Alcoholics Anonymous number 3, Dotson, the guy in the bed, the man on the bed, I don't know whether they have a picture on him. Yeah, I think it's in the bathroom. And they're surrounded by Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob, and Dr. Bob has the Bible out, because that's all they use for the first 4 or 5 years. He has the Bible out. And Dr. Bob's, this is what he says in the book. I know it almost verbatim. He says, I love the AA program, and I want to do the AA program more than anything else. He said, but I knew there was something more. I knew there was something more. I knew there was something I hadn't got. You know, it's one thing when you read the big book and you identify with the drinking part. Oh, man, how many people read the big book and identified the drinking part? How many people read the jaywalker and identified with that? You said, man, I am the jaywalker, you know? I'll tell you, it's another thing when you identify with the thinking part. And it's even another thing when you identify with the rocket in the fourth dimension part. You know, there's 3 different things going on. There's the drinking, the problem, and then there's the thinking, and then there's the rocket in the fourth dimension. And when you start identifying with that stuff is when you start growing. As you grow, all of a sudden you pick up the big book one day and you say this book is all about drinking. Then one day you pick up the big book because you're 10 years sober, but you're nuts and you're crazy, and you say all sorts of stuff in there about thinking and emotions and everything. And one day you're rocking in the fourth dimension of existence. You pick up the big book and you notice all the stuff about God, and all the stuff about religion and God, and you know you understand all of a sudden what they're saying. He says we lose all prejudices even against organized religion. I said that happened to me. We begin to see where religion. I said that happened to me. You start reading stuff that has to do with people that are actually not only sober physically but sober mentally, and say and all of a sudden you're reading the book differently. You're not even looking at the drink, and all of a sudden you find you're hanging around with people where drinking isn't even an issue. You know, it's not even the issue. So you know that. So here I am. So I'm 3 months sober, and that's what I guess I just wanted what these people had. You know, that weren't drinking. And so I'm 3 months sober, 4 months sober, 5. I don't know. Look, I've got dementia, you know. I'm either got dementia or I'm emotionally sober. I don't know. But all I know is my mind's a blank 90% of the time. You know, there's nothing going on up there. There's 2 neurons working and they're waving goodbye to each other. You know, it's over, you know. All I can do, you know, when I used to start doing this thing, I would come in here with this book all marked up with underlined everything. You ever see people with that? Nothing wrong with that. And I would come in with the 12 and 12 all marked and underlined, or the doctor, you know, they'd all marked. There's nothing wrong with that. And I would talk about mechanically how you do this. This is how I did step 4. This is how I do step 5. This is how I did it. And now I come in and all I know is about my life. All I can do is give testimony about my life. I got all that other stuff in there somewhere. I got the big books all in there. So the 12's in there. Dr. Bob Music, it's all in there, you know. You know, when Bill Wilson said to Henrietta Seiberling, when he was about 6 months, 7 months, 8 months sober, he said, Henrietta, we talk too much about God. Bill Wilson, the guy who saw the white light, the room lit up, so this is the God of the prophets, all that sort of stuff. Like a few months later, he's saying, I think we talk too much about God. You know? You know something? That's happening in every AA room in the United States. We talk too much about God. You talk too much about God. I identify with Bill Wilson. I'm a Bill Wilson guy. You know, I'll talk about God as long as I'm with other people that talk about God. I'll hold hands and say, Lord, as long as with other people. It ain't going to happen at lunch in a restaurant. You know, it's not. And you know what she said, what Henrietta said to him? She said, you know, Bill, the only reason you're sober is because of God. Remember that white light thing? He said, stop worrying about pleasing alcoholics. Stop worrying about pleasing alcoholics. Maybe you should be more concerned about pleasing God. Don't worry about pleasing alcoholics. He says, they've been pleasing themselves all their lives. He says, instead of thinking about, you know, alcoholics, you better start thinking about God. And says, finally, Bill Wilson agreed. That was finally. And if you read the history of Bill Wilson, I'm not talking about the big book, but he wrote 3.5 years sober, or the 12 and 12, which he wrote 15 years sober, which is, by the way, when the conference met. The conference met right before Bill was using the LSD, and everybody in the conference said less than 15 years. So I'm not saying the conference did anything bad or there's nothing good about the traditions, but there's a lot that happens to you between 15 years and 40 years. There's a lot of shit that happens to you between 15 years and 40 years, and there's a lot of guys that are so locked in to something that was written by Bill right before he was going for the LSD. It's like think of it as a giant business meeting where nobody has more than 15 years. And the guy that's running it is not doing that great. Oh, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? Well, you'll get over it. Don't worry about it. Just want to plant something in your mind so you can think about it, for a while. Everybody is they come in here and they're so locked into certain things. And, as you go up and, man, I'll tell you, you'd be surprised how cancer can change your mind. I've had it 3 times. You'd be surprised at how real serious stuff can change your thinking about life and things. You'd be surprised at watching people drink again. So what does this have to do with the third step? Well, it's all about the third step. It's all about the third step because nobody's doing it. So what do I mean by that? I'll tell you what I mean by that. I'm not saying nobody's doing it. Actually, everybody's doing it. Everybody does. The third step's easy. Haven't you read the big book? Have you read the big book? I could have made this meeting 5 minutes. That's what I used to do, 5 minutes. He says, you go up in a quiet place, you get down on your knees, and you say the third step prayer. We are now done with the third step. Am I wrong? I don't think I'm wrong about that. I don't know. Does anybody know what the third is? I think that's what it is. That's the third step. You make a decision, turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand them. By the way, that you understand them thing, you know what it says in Bible? Everybody loves that. But you know what it says? He said, I didn't want to go for God. I hated God. I didn't like the idea of God. And some guy gives him a suggestion. Well, why don't you just use your own understanding at 2 months or 3 months, where he's dealing with oatmeal. You know what I mean? Your own understanding. And he said that melted the icy things and all that sort of stuff. And he says, I could use that as a beginning. A beginning. Most people in AA sort of keep that beginning thing going until they got 20, 25 years. Because the book says, doesn't that the book say? So the book says this is a spiritual kindergarten. When you graduate from kindergarten. So here's what I do. I get down on my knees and I say the third step prayer, and now I get up and now I'm done with the third step. I give my life, whatever the third step prayer is. I didn't memorize it. You guys got it all memorized. You know how to do it. I never memorized it. I pray a hell of a lot. I think of a lot of prayers, but I did that third step prayer. So I was done with the third step, and then I checked my bank account. I was done with the third step, and then I bought a car. I was done with the third step, and then I got married. I was done with the third step, and then I had kids. I was done with the third step, and then I spent money. I was done with the third step, and then I bought shit. I was done with the third step, and then I got a haircut. I was done with the third step, and then I spent the rest of my life managing my life and thinking about all the things in my life, thinking about how to get them, how to keep them, how to have them, the things that were important. In other words, I spent the rest of my life doing the same shit I was doing before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, but I wasn't drinking. And I belonged to an AA group, and I had a medallion. And you know what the big book says that is? You know what that is? Define that as self-will. Define that as it says your real reliance has to be on God. Define that on something called self-reliance. That's what they mean when they say we had to quit playing God. How do you play God? The way you play God is you live life based upon your intellect, based upon your thinking, based upon what you think is right and what you think is wrong, because who's going to tell you what's right or wrong? You know what I mean? Because you don't have a God. You don't know who God is. You say, I believe in God, but what you really believe in is the concept of God. But you can't have a relationship with the concept. That's why they say if a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life would have solved our problems. You know what we like to say God is? People say, well, it's good orderly direction. You know what that is? That's a mere code of morals. That's a better philosophy of life. Or they like to say, do the next right thing. You know that? That's a mere code of morals or a better philosophy. You know that kind of stuff can change based upon how much money you have in the bank. those kind of morals, do the next right thing, can change whether or not you need the money, so you're going to not give it back, or you don't need. That can change with an alcoholic like that. We're excuseaholics. You know who's God for an alcoholic? Most alcoholics? I'm God. I'll make the decision. You don't make the decision. Sometimes when you're new and you really love a sponsor and you really get close to him, which is a good thing, you'll actually go to him and you'll ask him questions. And you let him tell you the answers and maybe you're not ahead. But most people pretty much are their own God. They play God, and their real reliance is on themselves, which can work for 10 or 15 or 20 years. But then you reach that point where you hit the brick wall, and the meetings aren't working, and the steps aren't working. It may be something disastrous happens in your life. Your house gets foreclosed on, or you get cancer, something like that. But then you're in a really difficult position, because then everything you've relied on all your life, all the steps, all the 4-step, when you're lying in bed and you got cancer, the 4-step ain't going to do it for you. It just really isn't. Because you need to have a relationship with God, and you can't have a relationship with God because you don't have a God, you have a concept. And it really gets hit home when you're in that position. But sometimes you're not in that position until things get bad. It may take a long time, just like it took a long time to get the drinking thing, So this morning I get calls from people from all over the world. I really get calls from people that have time. I love newcomers, but that's neither good or bad. I spent many years working with newcomers, and I'll work with a newcomer now. You know what I mean? But most of the people that call me up have like 20 or 25 or 30 years. I mean, they're in the program. They're going to meetings, and all that sort of stuff. And they call me up and they have a problem. They have something that's really bothering them in their life. And these are people who've been going to meetings for 20 years, 25 years, 15 years, and things like that. I mean, something? They know how to do the steps. They know what the 4th step is. They know the jargon. They're chairing meetings. They're doing step series. You with me? Now, and 90% of the time, not all the time, 90% of the time, they call me as a last resort. Most people don't call me except it's a last resort. And I don't look at that in a bad way. I understand what's going on. I understand that deal. Because they'll do whatever they can to try to work this thing without calling me. It could be pride, it could be something else. But I love people. I love talking to people. But I think one of the reasons that people hesitate to call me because they know what I'm going to tell them. No, I'm going to tell them this bullshit that I'm telling you. I'm going to talk about God. It's not that I can't tell. If somebody gets all confused and he starts telling me, I said, you really need to do a 4-step. I know how to say you really need to write this guy down on paper. This is why it bothers you. So you need to find out because you're confused. And I don't even understand you. So let's try to find out. You really need to make amends to this guy. You really need to do a 5th step. I know how to do the step thing. But when you get a guy who's 20 years sober or 25 years sober, and he's really in a bad situation, a bad thing, it may look like the steps, and he's going to meetings and he's sponsoring people. It may look like the steps. It may look like just do a 4-step, but underneath all that, it's a lack of something else. And that's because God is not the central fact of his life. That's because he does not have what's called the great fact. Is this and nothing less. That God has to be the central fact of your life. You have to abandon yourself utterly to God. As it says in the last page, it says, but we will we won't know you. That's not important. God will determine that. Because your real reliance has to be on him. He'll even determine the fellowship, who you'll hang out in the fellowship. He'll give you a fellowship you crave. And that fellowship you crave will be a godly fellowship. And once you get into that fellowship, you'll never want to leave that fellowship. As a matter of fact, once you get in the fellowship where all they're doing is talking about God, you'll never want to necessarily hang around. You'll go there with the fellowship where all they're talking about is not drinking, going to a meeting, and my cat died. You know what I mean? You won't want to hang out with the thumb-sucking crybabies unless you can lend something to the deal. So here's it's not the problem, but this is just the way it is. The 3rd step is, it says in the book, it's very simple. Get down on your knees and say the deal, the prayer, and you've now done the 3rd step. You made a decision. But that decision can be wiped out just like it was wiped out with Bill Wilson in a nanosecond by worldly clamors. And if there's one thing that will never stop, you may stop praying. You may stop thinking about God. You may stop getting down on your knees. You may even stop going to meetings. You may stop talking to your sponsor. Yeah, but I'll tell you one thing will never stop. This world will never stop. You got to be up on this thing. You got to be on this thing 24/7 because all alcoholism needs is 5 minutes. All it needs, you could have the armor on and be all set and be all wonderful, and all it needs is a half an hour. All it needs is a half an hour. All it needs is a telephone call. One telephone call and a letter. And you're off to the races. And you're not as strong as you think you were. And so that's why the real third step is what happens after the third step. After you find out all the resentments, you get rid of all that, which is designed really to allow in the sunshine of the spirit. Then you get into the sixth step. So for me, where I'm at, since I deal with so many people that have done all the steps and are miserable, you know what I mean? It's hard for me to talk about the third step without talking about other stuff. And so when I'm talking to somebody who's got this problem, they've got time, and we get through whatever we think the issue is, then I start talking about God, which is the reason why they probably weren't calling me up in the first place, because they've been avoiding that deal because it's too drastic. But now they're experiencing life, and it's almost like a second bottom. You know, like you never wanted to talk to people about stopping drinking, right? You don't like people telling you to stop drinking, right? But you hit a place in time where you're willing to do anything to stop drinking. Well, maybe 10 or 15 years from now, or 5 years from now, you'll be willing to sit down with somebody who's going to talk to you about God. I don't really give a shit about all the other stuff. I'm going to talk to you about God. I'm talking about I'm not talking about believing in God. I'm talking about, do you believe God? Well, what do you mean? Well, you don't know what I mean because you don't have a God. Your God is good orderly direction, some sort of concept or something. You pray to when you're sick and you're down on your luck and you don't know what's coming up next, and you got all that head full of AA, and you're trying to have a relationship with God and you realize you don't have one, and nobody in AA is going to help you. And all the meetings are going to talk about is don't drink and go to meetings, or just sponsor another person, or do the coffee or something like that. You may get to the time where it's going to get a scary deal. You're going to hit a second deal in AA. Or you're going to go out and you're going to drink again or something like that. You know? So I don't know, is this technically a third step meeting, or is it a 6-step meeting, or is it a 12-step meeting? What the hell is this? But I can tell you this, it's the truth as I know it in the last 44 years that I've been around, and you can do with it whatever you want. I know if we got 60 people here, you know, we got 60 people hearing 60 different things, and some people are hearing shit I'm not even saying, because they're filled with resentment or pride, or you don't understand me, or you don't know me, or anything like that. But they'll hear me, they'll remember this in about 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. You'll say, that's what this son of a bitch was talking about, you know? So thank you very much.